Good afternoon. It's September 8th, 2020, and this is episode 8 of Rob Explains, your daily podcast discussing and explaining cool, random, and interesting things. I'm Rob. Thank you for joining me. For our topic today, we're going to return to extreme weather, this time tornadoes. Of course, you know what a tornado is. You've seen them on TV and in the movies. Twister, obviously, about a tornado. But what is a tornado really? Well, it's really just moist air moving in a certain direction. Let me explain. Tornadoes are already rare. They don't happen out of every storm, but you have to have a storm to have a tornado. So, first requirement, you must have a thunderstorm. But it's not just any thunderstorm. You need a particular kind of thunderstorm, and that's called a supercell. These thunderstorms have a high ceiling, all the way up to 50,000 feet. But they are raining on the ground just like your normal thunderstorm. So just imagine a cloud bank that goes from a few hundred feet all the way up to 50,000 feet. Then you have to have a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. Now, generally, obviously, with a thunderstorm, you're already going to have some moisture in the air. But with these supercells, you need to have an extremely high amount of moisture in the air. And that moisture has to be at nearly ground level, just at the level of the ground or at the bottom of the clouds. As a supercell moves over the ground, that causes condensation. Condensation is just water moving from its liquid form into its gas form. As that happens, it starts to move up into the cloud, all the way up to the high reaches of the cloud. And when things get up high, they start to cool down. As they get cool, they move back down to the bottom of the cloud. This creates kind of an upwards, downward cycle, but more specifically here, we're worried about the up cycle, and that is, of course, the updraft. The number 3 requirement for a tornado, you have to have an extreme updraft caused by high moisture. Now, the updraft is going to move warm, moist air up into the cloud, and of course, cold air will rush in to take the place of the warm air. This colder air can be from outside of the storm system, outside of the supercell, or it can come as the air is returning from those higher reaches back down to the bottom of the cloud. This creates what we would call a downdraft. As this updraft and downdraft cycle starts to strengthen because of the moisture in the cloud, it creates a pulling effect on the clouds at the bottom of the supercell. This is a mesocyclone. It's rapidly turning air at the bottom of a supercell. That turning effect is because the air is trapped between multiple updrafts as part of this storm system. Now, when you're looking at a meteorological map or you're watching a storm cell move across your area on TV, you'll notice that a lot of times it has a little hook, that the clouds will form a hook area, and they tell you that's where you need to watch out for the tornadoes. Well, that's because that little hook area is a band of downdraft wrapping around the back of this updraft area. And when that hook starts to form, it means that there's an area of updraft that's starting to circle and move up towards the clouds. When it touches the bottom, our mesocyclone will fully form. As the mesocyclone starts to move down out of the cloud, the downdraft that was just moving towards the ground may start to wrap around that mesocyclone. And when it does, we now have an intense temperature difference. Warm, moist air moving in an updraft into the mesocyclone and then higher up into the clouds. Cold, dry air coming down in the downdraft and wrapping around the outside. And this temperature difference and the moisture difference will cause that mesocyclone, which looks kind of like a funnel, to tighten and tighten and tighten. The winds in the cloud in that tightening little mesocyclone will start to pick up because they're just being whipped around. Basically, the high updraft is being whipped around inside a shell of a downdraft. And when that mesocyclone touches the ground, we have a tornado. Now, tornadoes can be very narrow, only a few hundred feet across. They can last a very short time, less than a minute, but they can also go as much as half a mile wide, and they can last for over an hour. Tornadoes are measured on what was formerly known as the Fujita scale, but is now known as the Enhanced Fujita scale. And Dr. Fujita was a meteorologist out of the University of Chicago. The EF scale, formerly F, again, if you remember Twister, they had a F0, F1, F2. It's now an EF0, EF1, EF2, and EF0 will run from 65 to 85 miles per hour, and EF1, 86 to 110 miles an hour, EF2, 111 to 135 miles an hour. And these are the ones that may last longer and they may cause more damage. I mean, of course, an F1 or even an F0, EF1, EF0 will cause some damage. But as we start climbing the scale, after an EF2 is where we really see problems. An EF3 is 136 to 165 miles an hour. An EF4, 166 to 200 miles an hour. And an EF5, 201 and above. Now, tornadoes have happened on all the continents of the world. In North America, they happen most commonly, and in fact, as part of the world numbers, they happen most commonly in the United States. We have a unique set of circumstances here in the Great Plains where polar air, which is dry and cold, and equator air or Caribbean air that is warm and moist often meet in the center of the United States. And that air tends to meet east of the Rocky Mountains when the jet stream brings that polar air down closer to the equator. This has created what's called Tornado Alley. The central part of the United States, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Arkansas, Missouri, this entire area of the country is prone to sometimes hundreds of tornadoes per year. But keep in mind, some tornadoes will only touch down for a short period of time and they won't do much damage. A single supercell can spawn one tornado, it can spawn a cluster of tornadoes, and as that storm cell moves across the country, it can repeatedly spawn tornadoes. As it moves, it may spawn 3 or 4 and then move several hundred miles and spawn some more. And tornadoes are really dangerous, mainly because there's very little warning. When we talked about hurricanes, you're talking about a storm system that we now can see days or even weeks out. But while we can identify a supercell, and of course we can identify thunderstorms, the circumstances that bring about a tornado can occur quickly. So we can say, hey, this supercell may bring about tornado conditions. That's when you get a tornado watch. But quickly it can turn into a tornado warning, and that there can be quickly afterwards a tornado on the ground. At maximum, there may be only 20 minutes of warning before a tornado. So if you live in a part of the country that is impacted by tornadoes, it's good to have a plan in advance of what you'll do if a tornado visits your area. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Rob Explains. Look for new episodes daily wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode. Do you have a subject you'd like me to cover, or just looking for more Rob Explains? Find us online on all social media at Rob Explains. Got a comment, question, or query? Or did I get something wrong and you want to correct me? Shoot me an email, rob@robexplains.com, or you can leave a comment down below. I'll check those right after the show goes live. And you can send me a message, anchor.fm/RobExplains/message. And in the form of a voicemail, I can actually include it in a future episode. Once again, thank you for joining me. Until next time, this is Rob. Take care of yourselves and each other. Have a great day.